We're going to get started in the next, 2 minutes. Jason just got here. Okay. Thank you.
I'd like to thank you all for being here, and it is a true honor to be able to stand in front of you as the Attorney General-elect. It was a pretty momentous moment, at least for me personally. The realization that my mother fled Cuba on October 11th of 1965 was actually the date that she left, got her freedom. And almost 56 years later, almost to the day that she left, she was able to see her son get elected as a chief law enforcement officer of the Commonwealth of Virginia after fleeing a country where the country had no, obviously, consent for the rule of law or for individual rights or dignity. So it was amazing, and candidly, I'm still working the processing through that kind of momentous moment. It is indeed what I call the American miracle. I'm still very humbled by the trust that the voters of Virginia have placed in me to take on this role. And it's a role that I look forward to taking on in January. I'm here to announce my initial transition team. We're in this process right now of putting together systems in place. I did have a conversation with Attorney General Herring around 5 o'clock yesterday. He was very gracious. I thanked him for his public service. I have great appreciation for anybody who steps in the political arena and the public arena. I had a moment on the campaign where I got home one night relatively early, 9 o'clock, and I walked in the house and my oldest daughter looked at me and said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I live here," right? But great appreciation of anybody who serves in the arena. And Mark Herring has served the Commonwealth the last 8 years as Attorney General, and I wish him Godspeed in his next step as well. We have had just preliminary discussions with his office, and so we're going to start beginning that transition as well. I do think, we are going to have a little bit of a shift of focus in the office. Attorney General Herring was very vocal about the fact that he had turned the office into a progressive powerhouse. Those are his words, not mine. And I had campaigned and went to the voters of Virginia asking them to hire me, and one of that was I wanted to get it shifted back into more public safety and a law enforcement focus, precisely at a time when the murder rate's the highest it's been in over 2 decades in Virginia. And so that's going to be a big focus for me, and why you see some of these fine individuals that are part of my transition team behind me. One of my guide stars in my life is recognize you're not the smartest guy in the room, but recognize that you could be smart enough to know when you hear good ideas. And so I also love to know past practices, what's worked and what hasn't worked. And so I'm proud that helping to lead my transition team are former Attorney Generals Jerry Kilgore, Mark Earley, Jim Gilmore, Bob McDonald, Ken Cuccinelli, and Richard Cullen. Jerry Kilgore will be one of my point people in this transition period. Former Governor George Allen as well is advising and assisting in the transition. As I mentioned, we are getting refocused on public safety, and that's why I'm honored to have both Sheriff Mike Chapman of Loudoun County here by my side, Sheriff Carl Leonard, also of Chesterfield County, also Sheriff Glenn Hill of Prince William County. I was a former prosecutor, as many of you guys know, in Virginia Beach, so I'm honored to have also as part of my transition Bethany Harrison, the Commonwealth's Attorney of Lynchburg, Nancy Parr, the Commonwealth's Attorney of the City of Chesapeake, Stacy Davenport, the Commonwealth's Attorney of Chesterfield, Chuck Slemp, the Commonwealth's Attorney of Wise County, and Colin Stolley, the Commonwealth's Attorney of the City of Virginia Beach, to help advise me in this transition role as where the Attorney General can come alongside and work alongside and with our Commonwealth's attorneys, as well, obviously, as our sheriffs and public safety. I have a group of attorneys that are going to be advising me in this transition period as well. AJ Ferrati, Hunter Henger, Chuck James, Ashley Taylor, Elizabeth McClanahan, is former Chief Deputy Attorney General and served on the Virginia Supreme Court, Christopher Nolan, and Stan Baldwin, who also was a senior counsel at Amerigroup and is going to help and assist on a variety of healthcare involved issues. In addition to the additional advisor, we have Yesley Vega, Prince William Board of Supervisors, Michelle Zagier, Chairman of the Virginia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and Nicole Riley with the NFIB. That is an aspect of the office I want to look at, which is, sometimes, and I've said before, we do have a problem sometimes with people in government where they assume good intentions guarantee good results. That's not always the case. Sometimes they don't really grasp the unintended consequences, and that sometimes happens with our business regulations, where maybe they're well-intentioned, but in many ways they're hurting the very people we want to help. And I've always been a big believer in building a bottom-up economy, not a top-down. 2/3 of all new jobs are created by small business owners, those that are the first to get there in the morning, the last to leave at night. And if you talk to them, as I have, and I know Glenn Youngkin has as well on the campaign trail, and you talk to them continuously with things they're facing, one of the things they bring up is kind of the regulatory framework is getting really, really difficult for them. And so that's why I'm proud to have Nicole and Michelle to help advise me on that. Janet Kelly, former Secretary of the Commonwealth, and also served in the Attorney General's office under former Attorney General and Governor Bob McDonald. Jamison Fowler is going to be advising me on a variety of IT issues, and then Dr. Bill Thomas of Hampton University as well. So that's my initial list. We've been elected not even 48 hours, and so I suspect that this group of folks that I'm going to lean on and seek their advice and counsel will grow in the weeks and the time ahead. We're in this kind of 2.5-month transition period where I think the initial phase right now is just setting up the system in place to do the transition, candidly. And I think the next phase will be getting into a little bit more detail. But that is going to be a big part of what we're going to do. Is I'm a big believer, measure twice and cut once. And so right now we're in the kind of measuring phase where we are getting our systems in place so we can then move forward to the transition and then hit the ground running, because we'll get in on January 15th. Right with the legislative session has already started. Obviously, I'm still a legislator now, and I know how hectic that process is. And so we want to try to, as much as possible, be ready to be up and running effective on day one. And I look forward to doing that. Happy to take a few questions from the audience. Yes, sir. Well, listen, you have original jurisdiction on all computer crimes. You also do a variety of issues on the fraud front. You have consumer protection. That's one of the campaign issues that I talked about, was setting up a division within the Attorney General's office just focusing on seniors, senior strike force. Now, may have a different name by the time we get in, but it's going to be focused on particularly at a time when we have an aging population, a lot of seniors being taken advantage of to protect them. One of our major legislative initiatives, which we had talked about on the campaign, was to allow us, right now, the way it works is if a sitting Commonwealth's attorney requests it, we can come in and prosecute a case on their behalf. We're going to be seeking a legislative change, and Governor-elect Glenn Youngkin has already indicated that he would sign that into law. But a bill that would essentially say if the chief law enforcement officer in a jurisdiction, either the chief of police or the sheriff, makes a request because a Commonwealth's attorney is not doing their job, then I'm going to do their job for them. And I'm thinking specifically some of the so-called social justice Commonwealth's attorneys have been elected, particularly in Northern Virginia. We obviously are aware of some pretty horrific cases that have made the public where they fail to do their job. And if there's anything that I want to bring back to the forefront in this process, are the victims. That is that, I could tell you as a former prosecutor, those are the individuals that you remember are the victims. You don't remember the defendants so much. And so that's been a little bit of my frustration that I have seen, is I think the victims have been forgotten. And when prosecutors are making plea deals on child rape cases over the objection of the family, I have a serious problem with that. So we're going to have a legislative fix on that. And then obviously you could do a variety of joint task force. Project Exile was an incredibly successful program where the Attorney General's office would work with the U.S. Attorney's office to prosecute people using guns in the commission of a felony. I'm old enough to remember when Richmond was the murder capital of America. And I think that's going to be a critical component as well. Human trafficking is a huge issue for me. I want to get a real sense of where they are right now in this office. Do they have a joint task force with the federal authorities on that? Because we have a huge problem in Virginia. It's a transient, both 81 and 95 has a large amount of human trafficking that happens in both of those corridors. It's a multi-generational crime because it affects the individual, and it affects almost every aspect of the life. And that's a very big personal issue for me. So yeah, there is a huge law enforcement component in the office, in addition, obviously, to being the attorney for the Commonwealth of Virginia. Yes, sir.
I have a twofold question. The first one being, do you plan to investigate Loudoun County Public Schools and the recent sexual assaults that have happened there?
Yes.
And the follow-up to that, we know the rape kit backlog was eliminated last year. What are you planning to do to ensure that a backlog doesn't happen again?
Well, listen, I think that was one of the great accomplishments of Attorney General Herring's office, and I applaud him for that. And I will continue to make sure that is not the case.
I want to ask you about the parole board. We know that you, the governor-elect, and lieutenant governor-elect have said that you want to fire the current board, bring in a new board. What is your ideal parole board makeup, and also what's your stance on parole in general?
I think the parole board needs to be fired. I think that is a decision that's going to rest with Governor-elect Youngkin, and I think he can address that. I think, knowing in his heart, I think the main thing is make sure victims aren't forgotten. I think that is a critical component. When Governor George Allen was governor, he made sure that he had victims, and victims' voices were heard on that parole board. But the fact you have a situation like Patrick Schooley, who had not one, not two, but 3 life sentences without the possibility of parole for the brutal home invasion, rape, and murder of 78-year-old Bessie Roundtree. And Bessie Roundtree's family found out that Patrick Schooley was back on the street, even though he had a life sentence, when they heard about it on the news. That's unconscionable. That's just unconscionable to do that to a victim. I think the first priority is make sure victims' voices are being heard in that process. My general position on parole is I believe in the abolition of parole for violent offenders. But listen, the parole board makeup and the decision is going to be with Governor Glenn Youngkin, Governor-elect Glenn Youngkin.
Do you anticipate any changes with the way your office handles the civil rights division that Harry set up shortly
I don't know how Attorney General Herring has set that up. And so we're right now setting up the system in place to do the transition. And once we do that in place, then we can get a sense of how the office is being structured and how it works. And as I said, smart enough to know when that I'm not the smartest guy in the room, and I'm smart enough to know when I hear good ideas. I'm going to want to talk to other attorney generals on how they also have run the office, how they have set that up, and I'm going to get their wisdom and counsel, and then make decisions accordingly.
Are there any of those initiatives that you would like to end?
I have been so focused on getting through Tuesday, and I'm going to look through and what his initiatives are, and then I'll make decisions then.
For Virginia citizens who watch the news via Telemundo, if you feel comfortable answering the question in Spanish, feel free. If not, that's fine. But what plans do you have to help the Hispanic community here in Virginia?
Well, I mean, listen, I think the Latino community is overwhelmingly, they believe in the same thing as so many Virginians are, which is they believe in faith and freedom and family and entrepreneurship. And right now, as Governor Glenn Youngkin noted, we're 49th in the country in small business startups, and I think it's going to be critically important to see what are those barriers of entry. But I've said before that if I recognize I've been the first child of an immigrant ever elected Attorney General, so if your family came to this country seeking hope and opportunity, there's a good chance your family's a lot like my family. It'd be the biggest honor of my life to be your Attorney General. All right. Any other questions, thoughts? All right. I so appreciate everybody. We'll have more information for you all, and if we have not already sent one out, we will send out a press advisory on the on our announced transition team. All right. Thank you all. God bless.